More than a year after cannabis was legalized in Minnesota, the state is rolling out new regulations. Valley News Team's Quinn Gorham explains.
It's been roughly 17 months since Minnesota first opened the Office of Cannabis Management, and even though Minnesotans have yet to see the first brick-and-mortar cannabis dispensaries open here in the state, the office is working hard to get them in the industry started by early 2025. Interim Director Charlene Briner says it's a complicated process, but one they hope yields results sometime soon. The Office of Cannabis Management was created from scratch when the drug was legalized for recreational use. Briner described it as, quote, building a plane while flying. The agency has been tasked with setting the standards for this brand new industry, all while preparing licenses for business owners and growers. Originally, the licensure process was slated to begin after rulemaking was completed, but some new laws passed this spring aim to speed up that process. This summer, over 1,800 social equity applicants submitted applications for pre-approval after the legislature decided to allow businesses and cultivators to prep for the market before receiving a license. Briner says the pre-approval process will speed things up once the first licenses are distributed.
We recognize that we are in the process of implementing and still building out our agency, but the legislature, in an effort to kind of jumpstart cultivation, did put some specific mechanisms in place that would allow us to license early prior to our rules being in place.
The 1,800 applicants received will also go through a pre-approval lottery. Briner also addressed comparisons to other states' timelines for rollouts. Specifically, she said that Minnesota doesn't want to become oversaturated with large multi-state growers, and that they want to prioritize a Minnesota-centric market in this budding new industry. Reporting in St. Paul, I'm Quinn Gorham.
Officials say it's possible Minnesota will begin to see its first non-tribal dispensaries in the first half of the new year.